All right, Bigger Pockets people, you asked for it and we're doing it. We're talking cash out refinance day. If you know what it is, you know. If you don't, buckle up. Let's hit an intro. All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about the cash out refinance or cash out refi. It's basically Christmas when you're able to do with this property. It means it's gone up in value enough that you can take some equity and you can play with it. Now, to keep things simple, we're gonna do an example on Excel. We're gonna do a building that's worth $1 million. It's increased to 1.5 million. And we'll kind of run through the scenarios. What I see on YouTube is I see a lot of videos that go a little too much into the weeds, and then you start losing people. Then other ones that are just kind of explanatory notes on what a refinance is. Hopefully after this video, number one, you'll know what a cash refinance is. And number two, you'll know what to do with that money when you do get it. All right, let's get into it. All right, don't worry about all of this mess here. This is a very simple example I'm gonna do. And it's actually very close to a deal I had in the past. Now, for the simplicity of it, we're gonna use big round numbers. So we're talking about $1 million property has increased to 1.5 million, and we're gonna figure out what we can do with that. Number one, how do we refinance that? And number two, when we get that cash from the bank, and this is where I think a lot of videos fall short, what the heck do you do with that money? And how do you make it work for you? So let's get into it here. So I thought it'd be pretty, I think it's pretty simple here. So what we have, we're gonna look at this area first. So 2015 is when you purchased the property. The value of the property was 1 million. The mortgage is $800,000. And that's one of the first assumptions we're gonna make. We're gonna assume you put a 20% down payment, okay? That's the equity piece here. And we're also gonna assume that the bank requires you, after you refinance the property, to maintain that 20% equity, or in other words, 80-20 loan to value, LTV. It's gonna differ by different states, different banks. It could be larger, smaller, but let's just assume it's 20%. So annual net operating income. As you can see, I like to keep things simple. 100,000 is what we're going to assume in net operating income. This would be a 10% cap rate, and I understand listen, if I wish our markets were anywhere near this, the markets that we're currently in. If your market's lower or market's higher, that's fine. Just using an example here. Already calculated the mortgage rate. Assumption number three, I guess, is the fact that we have an annual mortgage payment here of 4.5%. I think I amortized this over 25 years. So that's assumption number three. So number one, 20% down payment assumption. Number two, we're assuming $100,000 in NOI. And number three, 4.5% mortgage. Everybody's cool with that? Let's keep rock and rolling here. Okay, now 100,000 minus this 50 and change. Got this number here. This is your cash flow before taxes. Cap rate, as we mentioned, 10%. Okay, so listen. 2019 was great. You're in New York or LA or San Francisco or Toronto, and you've had a great run here. Your property has gone up to 1.5 million. Your mortgage stays the same, right? Nothing changes there. Equity, this is where you get a little bit of a change here. So you have the 200,000 you originally put in. However, we've gone to 1.5 million. So now we are at 700 in total equity. Good for you. The question, how do you get it and what do you do with it? So net operating income, I'm gonna stop listing them because I'm gonna mess them up. So this is another assumption we're making. So I think it's fair to say in a market that has increased in property value, net operating has increased. And I've been fairly conservative with that. I said net operating income over this time period increased by 15%. That could be through either the passage of time or forced appreciation, where you've, increase your rents, etc. So we're at 115,000 in 2019. Mortgage, like I said, stays the same, so the payment's the same. However, your cash flow before taxes is up. And one crucial thing to note here is you have your 7.67% cap rate now, because the cap rate in 2019 is calculated on the 2019 NOI and the 2019 value. So gone are your days of 10% cap rates. You're now at 7.67. So if somebody bought this particular property and you sold it, that would be the cap rate they're realizing. Now, let's talk about this. So $1.5 million, what can we pull out of this property? So let's scroll down here, and this is, I'm gonna run through this here. All you really need to see right now is this guy here. So the way you calculate it, again, keeping an 80-20 loan to value, is you multiply your value by 80%, okay? Then you subtract the current mortgage, okay? The current mortgage we have here, let's see, is $800,000. So you need to, basically you're increasing your mortgage when you're refinancing. So you have to look at this like the bank's cutting you a check for the current mortgage, which they're not. Nobody actually cuts a check, but this is the math here. What that equates to is available equity of $400,000. So out of that 500 you've increased, you can pull 400. Now you can just tell that you're maintaining a LTV by thinking about it, but if we were to clarify it further, let's look at your total debt now. So this is your remaining equity is at 20%. So this is your debt that you've pulled out of it, right? The 400,000, 800,000 of what was originally the mortgage. So now your total debt is 1.2 million. So stay with me here. A value of 1.5 million minus your new debt load of 1.2 million leaves you with $300,000, and $300,000 divided by 1.5 is boom, 20%. So you're sitting pretty. You have done what the bank has asked you to do. Now they haven't really asked you, they've just required it. So, you would have had to do that anyways. Okay, so this is the fun part. So you're able to pull out this available equity, $400,000. And I put it here as a cash out. So what I did, 2019. So it's still 2019. You have this $400,000. And this is where I'm gonna make another assumption. Typically when you pull equity out of a property, you're pulling it out of the property and you're usually using when you pull debt out of or equity, which is increasing your mortgage, so it's technically debt now. So that 400,000, when you pull that out, a lot of times when you go to buy a new property, you're usually gonna put your own cash into the deal. And I think that's what complicates a lot of these YouTube videos, because when you're using your own cash, then it kind of starts messing around with the mortgage payments. So for simplicity, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna take this $400,000 that we increased our debt load by, and we're gonna buy a duplex, and we're gonna buy it with no cash. So this is gonna be totally leveraged. So if you look down at the mortgage payments here, I'm also making that assumption that the mortgage payments are gonna remain the same as the mortgage payments on our current place. Now that might not be the case. Sometimes the mortgage payments will be lower, sometimes they'll be higher. Here you could argue, since cap rates have gone down, mortgage payments may have gone down as well. But we're gonna leave that aside and just assume that the mortgage remained the same at a 4.5%. So I've already calculated the mortgage. So let's go back here, $400,000. We've got $30,000 in net operating income, and I want you to understand how I achieved this. This was the prevailing market cap rate we can assume in 2019. So keeping that assumption, we're gonna say in 2019 here that the yield, the cap rate, is also gonna be 7.67%. So our NOI is $30,680. Now subtracting the mortgage payments, which we already talked about, you are left with $5,432 of cash flow before taxes. Now I know what you're thinking. That's probably what you're thinking. It's not that great. We looked at a property, even though it was half the value. So if we look over here, we were getting $49,000. Now granted, this is $400,000, but even if you chop this $49,000 in half, it's much more than what we're getting here. But this is really where you have to understand what you're doing when you're refinancing. And you have to look at it as the totality of the property you have and the property you're purchasing. So let's pop down to the after refinance section here. And this is where it starts making sense. What have you done? You've got a property that's worth $1.5 million. You were able to take out $400,000 and buy another property. Now your total debt load now is $1.2 million. However, if you go down here, we need to add the annual net operating income. We need to add the 2019, the current property, and the 2019 new property, the duplex. So suddenly we're at $145,000 in change for net operating income. Okay, starting to look better. And here's part of the reason that it starts making even more sense. The annual mortgage payment, this one now is adding this one plus this. So the duplex plus the current property. So now you're at a mortgage annual mortgage payment of $75,000. So it's almost a weighted average. And now here's the number that makes this really shine. If you look at the 9.71%, that is the cap rate on your new deal, your new NOI with your new value. So you've basically, in a market of 7.67%, you've averaged out by doing an average of your current property plus this duplex you have of 9.71%. And that's the beauty of the cash-out refinance. So listen, if you're in a situation where you think that taking equity out of your property, but you are still being prudent, you can still make payments, you're above water, you're not doing the deal just to do the deal, you, in an after refinance position, have an even better yield, then the cash-out refinance is a fantastic tool for any investors. All right, I hope that is clear as mud. I'm just joking. I hope that helped you out. If there's anything specifically here that I didn't go into enough detail, or you just have questions in general, comment below, and maybe in another video I can clarify if there's any points that you'd like me to go over. So smash the like button. You're still smashing? Smash the like button, subscribe, and we'll catch you next week. Take care.